35,000. 35,000. That's how many decisions researchers say that you and I make every single day. 35,000. I mean, just rewind and recall some of the choices you have already made this morning already. When you woke up, you had to decide whether or not you were going to get out of bed or whether you would just roll over and stay nestled in the covers, worshiping at Bedside Baptist. You all made the right choice. You walked into the kitchen and had to decide what to have for breakfast. I mean, even if you chose the same bowl of cereal you always did, because truthfully, you could have had a piece of toast. You made a decision just like Steve on what to wear to church. You made choices on which roads you would travel and take to arrive here. And pulling into the parking lot, you had to make the choice. Do you take the first spot available or leave that for someone else? I mean, you're at church and God could be watching. And whether you want to admit it or not, you had a choice as to which pew you would actually sit in today. All these choices, these sea of decisions that we swim in day in and day out. 35,000. As a matter of fact, Cornell University has dove a little deeper and has determined that of that 35,000, 226 are around food alone. And you were just answering the question if you wanted fries with that meal. All these decisions that we swim in. As a matter of fact, right now, in this moment, you're deciding whether or not to keep listening to this sermon or start composing a grocery list that you'll have to get afterwards. After all, you are a bit low on cereal after this morning. The choices we make are so vital and vibrant, and I think that is one of the keys as we enter into the scripture story this morning. The decisions that both Jairus and the beloved daughter of God who is suffering, both of them need to make a decision, a choice in their life. Now, some scholars suggest that these two stories were really meant to be kept separate. They weren't ever meant to be mushed and merged together, that somehow or another that happened along the way. That really these are two different and distinctive narratives. But I don't necessarily see it that way, because I think the gospel writer Mark is actually using some wonderfully subtle details. Wonderfully subtle details that are like threads weaving these two stories together. Take, for example, the number 12. It connects the two stories. You have the woman, this beloved daughter of God, who has suffered, struggled for 12 long years. And then at the end, we hear that Jairus' daughter was 12 years old. You have the truth that both Jairus and the woman come and throw themselves down, kneel before Jesus with prayer and in hope. You have the truth that both who are needing healing and help are the same gender, female, which means that they would have been pushed to the fringe and fray of society. They wouldn't have always been seen or prioritized in the culture in which Jesus lived. Perhaps one of the most compelling thread that ties and tethers these two different stories together, though, is the fact that I believe both Jairus and the beloved daughter of God who is struggling, both of them come to Jesus with some fear and some faith mixed and mingled together. And perhaps it's that mixture of fear and faith mingled together where we might find our entry point, where our story might connect with the history of this story that we just told to each other. We start off with Jairus. Jairus, whose daughter is gravely ill. Can you picture him in your mind? See the worry that sits upon his face, maybe the way his shoulders are slouched over, the way it just keeps rummaging and roaming around his gut. And he comes and he seeks out Jesus with a prayerful plea. We're told that he was the synagogue president. One commentary I read put it this way. They said, that might sound impressive, but it really wasn't that exciting. Every former moderator in the church just whispered amen. But nevertheless, he was somebody who had a reputation. He was somebody who was known, recognized in the community. He was somebody who was looked to as a leader in the faith. And here he comes. Here he comes and kneels before Jesus. And I wonder to myself, was that out of inspiration? Was it out of desperation? Or was it maybe a little bit of both? And then the story gets interrupted by this woman who has suffered and struggled for 12 long years. We're told that she has been to every doctor in the phone book, had every medical test and treatment known, been experimented upon. Bring her life close. Bring that life that she would have lived close. Imagine the roller coaster, the hope that she would have had that this doctor, that this treatment, that this trial might actually be successful and cure her, only to have her hopes come crashing, crumbling down day after day, treatment after treatment. And I have to wonder again, did she come out of inspiration or out of desperation or perhaps a little bit of both? 35,000 choices you and I make every single day. And part of what tethers and ties the lives of these two unique individuals together is the fact that both of them made the choice, the decision to seek out Jesus. Because honestly, they didn't have to. Jairus could have stayed home. He could have held his daughter's hand, feeling helpless, angry, upset, going through the grief of losing a child. The woman could have just thrown in the towel. She could have said to herself, what's this street preacher going to do? I mean, sure, he healed that man who lived in the tombs last week, but is that really going to work for me? But both of these beloved children of God made the decision to seek out the healing and the hope and the presence of Jesus. 35,000 choices you and I make every single day. And I wonder if in the month of February, we could take that as an invitation and begin to prayerfully ponder why. Why do you or I make the decisions we do? Why do we say the things we say or act in the ways that we act? If you take that invitation seriously, what I think you'll find first and foremost is that so often a number of the 35,000 decisions we make every single day, so many of them are driven by either the past or the future. Sometimes they're driven by the past in ways that we get into this rut or routine. It's the way we've always done things. Or sometimes we're driven by the past because we want to do something new. We want to do something different, something distinctive. And there's the voice in the back of your mind that says, really? Don't you remember the last time you tried to do something new and you failed so spectacularly? That past, the way that we carry it with us, it influences and impacts us in so many ways. But the future can as well. And oftentimes it's the fear of the future. I mean, what would that person think if I did that? Or how might that person respond if I said that? So often we get caught up in trying to script the future that we miss the present moment. To just be with that decision, to prayerfully ponder that choice we're going to make. Reminds me of a great quote. The quote goes like this: when you sow a thought, you harvest an action. When you sow an action, you harvest a habit. When you sow a habit, you harvest your character. And when you sow your character, you harvest your life. Now let's be honest. Sometimes not every decision needs to be that major. I mean, sometimes, friends, it is just breakfast. But then there are other choices that do start to matter, that invite us to consider why are we deciding to do what we're doing? That certainly was at stake for these two beloved ancestors in faith, for Jairus and this woman. As a matter of fact, I think one of the most powerful and profound things that ties the lives of these two distinct, different individuals together is that both Jairus and this woman of faith, both leaned into hope. Both of them made the decision to live out and lean into hope. What would it look like for you and I to follow that kind of a choice? To be sure, some people are going to say we're being naive or Pollyanna or just plain foolish to hope. People will start to trudge out all sorts of evidence, reasons why we shouldn't hope today. The brokenness that can cut like a sharp shard in our lives, that which is all around us that troubles our souls. But make no mistake about it, Jairus and this beloved daughter didn't need to make the choices they made. They could have gone another way. Nor did they live in some great time. The Roman Empire was oppressing folks. There were stresses and strains on people's life. Here is Jairus with his daughter ailing. And here is a woman who has endured so much and spent everything she had. And yet both decide to hope. To hold that. To take this story with us, to let it weave its way into each of our own stories. And one of the final things I think that can be so important for us as we make the choices in our lives are prayer mantras. And I want to try to give you one today. The prayer mantra is 3 simple words. Now, hear this. Now, hear, H-E-R-E, this. Say that with me one time. Now, hear this. Now, this moment that is so fleeting and fragile. Here, in this moment, with all its beauty and all of its brokenness, this full of traces of God's grace and God's presence in our lives. This profound and powerful story from Mark invites us to prayerfully ponder some of the 35,000 decisions you and I make every single day. To lean into and to let the hope and the promise of God's presence guide us and ground us and lead us always After all, the truth is that the choice is ours. Amen.